And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about possible draft day trades. Before I get into the segment, though, I'd like to acknowledge a comment from Stupid Laker Fan. Now, that's his name. That's his name. Don't take that in any weird way, you guys. That's just his name. The East is not top heavy, so makes NBA boring. I mean, honestly, I think it's the opposite. The East is incredibly top heavy because it's like, only the top teams are going to be the competing teams in the Eastern Conference. So the West isn't top heavy, yes, but I think the East is incredibly top heavy because it's like, 1, 2, and 3, the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Bucks, in whichever order you want to put them in, those are going to be the teams that are going to be competing in the Eastern Conference. And I just don't think any other team can be able to match up against that. But that's just my opinion. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the... Oh, and also, yeah, you are right. It could make the NBA just a little bit boring. However, there is more parity in the NBA right now. Like, I mean, this is the first time that we've had 6 completely different championships in the span of 6 years. Like, 6 completely different championship teams. So there is parity. Like, there are other teams that are making big moves, and there are other teams that are doing what they need to do to end up winning. So let's get into this segment. So first we have, this is all like possible scenarios from Bleacherreport, by the way. So, and someone's calling me. Well, they're going to have to be on mute for the rest of this. So anyways, going into the trades and the possible, trades on draft day, we have DeJounte Murray. Now, DeJounte Murray, he's been on the trade block for a very, very long time. Like, he's been on the trade block for almost the entirety of the entirety of the second half of the NBA season. Like, he's been every team seems to be interested in him. So this trade scenario is between the Hawks and the Warriors. So the Warriors would get DeJounte in exchange for Andrew Wiggins, the 2026 second round pick, and the 2028 first round pick. So this is hypothetical. This is just possible scenarios that could happen on draft day. So do I agree with this trade? No. I don't think this is the best fit for DeJounte. And I also don't think this is a good fit for depending on, whether or not, if they do sign Klay Thompson, like if they do get Klay Thompson, but then again, they're going to be put in that first, second apron, which is something that you don't want to be put in. And with DeJounte, again, I'm not entirely sure just like how good of a fit that would be for the Warriors. I don't know. DeJounte on the Warriors, it just sounds a little bit odd to me. And I'm not entirely sure if the Warriors are going to be keen on getting another guard, DeJounte as well. But let me know what you guys think in the comments of that trade idea. I'm not a big fan of it. I mean, I'm not a big fan of it. I mean, he does bring a lot more value than Andrew Wiggins, that's for sure. But I don't really think adding DeJounte to this team is going to make it a competing team. But that's just me. I think maybe Paul George would be a much better fit and a much better option than DeJounte Murray. But again, that's just me because I feel like Paul George is a much better shooter than DeJounte, like a much better three-point shooter. And, I genuinely just feel like this would be a better move for the team. Like, I genuinely just feel that way. Now, looking into the other trades, we have the Spurs possibly, getting in on this action. Now, the Spurs, they could look to trade for... They obviously, they need a good guard. Like, I've been saying it from the beginning that the Spurs, they need a guard to pair up with Victor Wembanyama, because if you give him a guard that can give him the good looks, and all the things that, and all of the offensive opportunities, an unselfish guard at that, then you can succeed and you can eventually, you can elevate Victor Wembanyama's game just like that. And honestly, like, you want that point guard that makes players around them better. So here's a trade scenario that could possibly happen for the Spurs. Now, Spurs could get Darius Garland and the number 20 pick in exchange for Keldon Johnson, Zach Collins, and the number 4 pick that the Spurs have in the draft. This is a hypothetical scenario that I think is a little bit better suited for the Spurs, really, than it is for the then again, for the Cavs it could be seen as a win-win, but there were also reports saying that the Cavs, they aren't really too keen on trading, the main 4 players on their team. Like, they aren't really too keen on getting rid of Donovan, Darius, Evan Mobley, or Jarrett Allen. Like, those guys seem to be untouchable for the Cavs. But Darius Garland has also expressed, that if Donovan Mitchell signs that max with the Cavs, he wants to get traded. So if the Cavs eventually, if they just abide by the trades, and if they, by his request, and they think that they can get a good enough value in exchange for Darius Garland, then they might be open on trading him. And honestly, Darius Garland wasn't the first point guard that I had in mind with pairing with Victor, but if he is an option, I genuinely think, his passing and his playmaking and his scoring, while he isn't the best scorer, his playmaking, I think his playmaking will elevate having Victor Wembanyama on the squad. And honestly, how couldn't your playmaking elevate? I mean, Victor is so much taller than everyone else. You just have to throw the ball up in the sky, and Victor Wembanyama is going to grab it. It's that simple. And he is a little bit undersized. He is a little bit lacking in the defensive side of the ball. But if you're the Spurs, you aren't acquiring him for his defense. That's just not happening. So I think this is a pretty good trade for both scenarios. Now, there's also, the possibility that Donovan Mitchell gets traded in this offseason. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's still a possibility. And a team that's been very interested in acquiring Donovan is the Los Angeles Lakers. I said this before on a previous podcast, that the Lakers, and with LeBron and AD, they want the Lakers to go all in on another star. And going all in might be on another star. The other star might be Donovan Mitchell. And the trade scenario would look like this. The Lakers would get Donovan. The Cavs would get Austin Reeves, Roy Hachimura, Gabe Vincent, the number 17 pick, as well as the 2029 first-round pick. Now, I'm sure stupid Laker fan in the chat is going to completely dislike this trade because it gets rid of Austin Reeves, Roy, Gabe, and their future with the number 17 pick, as well as the 2029 pick. I don't really think I like this trade idea. I mean, the Lakers have tried to go all in on a star before with Russell Westbrook, and it ultimately ended up failing. So I don't really think that going all in it's going to cripple them. It's genuinely going to cripple them if they try to go all in. But I guess, if you have LeBron and Anthony Davis, you really have no choice. I mean, LeBron's not getting any younger. I know, we like to make jokes that LeBron, he ages backwards and things of that nature, but he's not getting any younger. And the time to win for LeBron is indeed, it's right now. So next on the trade block that could happen is Brandon Ingram. He might get traded. There's a possibility that he could get traded on draft day to the Sixers. Now, since the Sixers aren't really interested in acquiring Paul George, Brandon Ingram is honestly a pretty good alternative. At the small forward position. I'm not saying that Brandon Ingram is as good as Paul George. That's not what I'm saying. And especially not on the defensive side of the ball. But on the offensive side, Brandon Ingram is a very solid scorer. And the trade would look a little bit like this. The Sixers would get Brandon Ingram, and then the Pelicans would get the number 16 pick, as well as the 2028 first-round pick. So I think I feel like this move could be seen as a win-win for both sides. I mean, getting enough pieces to be able to build around Zion Williamson, even though Zion hasn't really been that healthy majority of the time he's been around. I mean, I think it's shown that the Brandon Ingram, like the experiment with Brandon Ingram on the Pelicans hasn't really been working. So I genuinely think it is time for Brandon Ingram to leave. It's time for him to get traded to a completely different team. But let me know what you guys think of this trade in the comments. If you guys agree with this move or if you don't agree with that move, if it were to even happen. Next on the trade block, this will be the last one that I'll be talking about before I move on to the final segment. Jeremy Grant. Obviously, I mentioned before the Dallas Mavericks. They're incredibly interested in acquiring Jeremy Grant. They want to get that other star on the roster to help Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. So here's a trade scenario for them. The Mavs, they get Jeremy Grant in exchange for Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxi Kleber, and the 2025 and 2031 first round pick. Now, the Mavs have mentioned that they want to get rid of Tim Hardaway Jr. They do want to trade him. And, getting Jeremy Grant in exchange for, those picks as well as Maxi Kleber, I think it's a very good trade because the Blazers, they aren't going to be winning a championship anytime soon, not with that roster. So with these picks and with Tim Hardaway and Kleber, they can rebuild their roster. I mean, I know Tim Hardaway Jr. is not exactly the type of player you want to build your roster around, but they can rebuild, they can use those picks to sort of get better players in the future if that by a miracle that happens. And then the Mavs, they get a player that sort of enables them to be able to compete against the Celtics as well as the rest of the Western Conference, which is trying to improve as much as they are. So those are all the trade scenarios that could possibly happen on draft day. Excuse me. So with that, we are going to go ahead and go into the final segment, which is going to be about the NBA draft. Actually, I'm going to talk about all the previous number one picks in the draft, since draft day is coming, and this is relatively, at least according to all the analysts, a much weaker draft class than the rest of the draft classes that have happened before. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that and just where the number one picks are right now, their situation, how good they've been, how good I think they're going to be, and things of that nature right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned.